Hi, everyone. Welcome. You're in the right place. We're just giving a few minutes, a minute or so for people to join, and we're admitting them from the waiting room. And we are being recorded. We are already recording and we are already on Facebook Live as well. So again, we're just giving everybody a minute to log in. Hello, Mayor.
Hello there, Miss Grace. How are
Good
you?
to see you.
And I want to let everybody know we've got this in English and Spanish today. We do need everyone in the meeting to choose which channel they want to be in. So if you go down at the bottom of your screen, there should be a globe looking icon. And there is a choice for English or Spanish. So please do choose one of those. Don't leave it off.
Great. Well, thank you all very much. I think we're doing really well with people joining. And so I think in the interest of everyone's time, let's go ahead and get started. Welcome. Welcome to the first official meeting of the new Sustainability Advisory Council for the City and County of Denver. I am Grace Rink. I'm the Executive Director of the Office of Climate Action, Sustainability, and Resiliency. And I have shared actually, I think I've shared in the chat, but I'm going to share it again because I bet not everybody can see it depending on when you joined. I did share the agenda. I will do that again. And we are going to begin with introductions. And we are going to first go to our mayor, Michael Hancock, who is able to join us for the very beginning of our meeting. So first we'll have some words of welcome from the mayor. Mayor, then you're welcome to stay on with us as long as you can. We'll move from that straight into introductions of all the SAC members, and then we'll get into the body of our discussion today. So Mayor, I hand it off to you. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Grace. And today I can't stay, but I look forward to joining you all for a meeting and staying it for its entirety throughout. So I really wanted to come on today and really to everyone who is on this call. First of all, congratulate you for, well, let me thank you first in availing yourself to the Sustainability Advisory Council, and two, congratulate you on being selected. Grace may have told you, we had hundreds and hundreds of applicants for this body, and for you to be selected, I think says something about your interest and says something about what others think about you. And so I want to thank you for availing yourself. This is going to be a critical body to help guide our thinking, our focus and priorities, and our investments going forward as it relates to sustainability and climate action and resiliency. We have a phenomenal team down at City Hall, and their efforts are going to only be improved and strengthened by the phenomenal people who sit on this body. And so I really wanted to just take the time to thank you for availing yourselves and being a part of this effort. This is critical. We look forward to hearing your voice. We look forward to hearing your thoughts and helping us make some critical decisions. So good luck. And I do look forward to joining you all for a meeting where I can sit and be a part of this in its entirety. Just not today, but I will be back and go forth and let's go rock and roll, and let's go and really address the critical issues of climate action and sustainability in our community. Back to you, Grace.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mayor, and go enjoy the rest of your day. I would also like to take a moment to notice that we have Alan Salazar here. He's our Chief of Staff. Alan, if you're with us, would you like to also give a warm welcome and say hello?
Great. Thank you, Grace. I really appreciate it. Can't really improve much on what the mayor has said. Want to acknowledge all of the leadership here, and of course, Councilman Joel Clark, who has also been a leader on this issue, and look forward to working with you. And we're very ably led by Grace Rink. We're so happy to have grabbed her to lead this effort.
Thank you so much, Alan. We're happy to have you for as long as you're able to stay, and when you need to check out, that's okay too. So we are going to move straight into our introductions. And now all of you are co-chairs or members of committees of the Sustainability Advisory Council standing committees. But for our audience and for Councilman Cashman, who is on the SAC but may not have been to any of our committee meetings, our standard greeting is to give our name, Please tell the organization that you work for and what committee you're on, although I'm going to call on you in the alphabetical order of your committees. And then we give a piece of good news. And that can be work related, it can be life related, it could be the fact that it's a beautiful sunny day and not raining. Doesn't have to be anything dramatic. That's how we're going to do our good news. I will give the example to start. And then, like I said, I'm going to call on you in the order of your committees. So again, my name is Grace Rink. I'm the Executive Director of the Office of Climate Action, Sustainability, and Resiliency for the City and County of Denver. And I am your staff liaison for the Sustainability Advisory Council. And my good news, actually somewhat related to what the mayor had to say, is that our team is looking forward to returning to the office by about mid-June is what we think will be possible for us. So we have been very productive working remotely for the last year plus, but we recognize that we really miss the cross-pollination of ideas that we get just by being together and those chance encounters. So we're still, working on our plan for what that looks like for us, but we know the light is at the end of the tunnel, and probably mid-June we'll be able to be together. And shortly after that, who knows, maybe we'll all be in the same place at once too. And so now I am going to go to, and it's hard for me to see that everybody's here, but let's go to the co-chairs of the Buildings and Homes Committee, and I'll go to Aaron Martinez first. Aaron, I see you. There you
Hi.
go.
Yep. Oh, I was struggling to unmute. But hi, I'm Aaron Martinez, co-chair of the Buildings and Homes Committee. I work for Urban Land Conservancy here in Denver. I've been in energy conservation work in low-income homes and now in buildings, and been in the nonprofit space here in Denver for about 15 years. My good news today. I got up to go do some very late winter season snowshoeing a couple of days ago. There was a ton of snow that came down up above Buena Vista in the Collegiate Peaks, and that was beautiful, and nobody else was up there, so that was perfect.
Oh, I'm sorry. And so then next we have Stephen Shepard.
Hello, everyone. Stephen Shepard. I'm the Executive Vice President of Denver Metro Building Owners and Managers Association. So I am also a chair with Aaron for the Buildings and Homes. Excuse me. I've worked for BOMA in a couple of other cities before coming to Denver 2 years ago. So Austin for 4 years and Oakland for 4 years. So been engaged with the buildings and sustainability space since 2012. So I'm excited to be part of this group. And I know Aaron and I are excited about the great committee that we have that we'll be working with. My piece of good news is, as of Saturday, I was officially fully and utterly vaccinated. And on Friday, I'm flying home to see my mom for Mother's Day.
Wonderful, thank you. All right, moving on to the Community Adaptation, Resiliency, and Environmental Justice Committee. I'm going to Kira Jackson.
Hey, everybody. My name is Kira. I work with the Montebello Organizing Committee out in Montebello. I'm born and raised resident out here, so really excited to be able to bring my perspective as youth, everyone in between in this work. As Grace said, I'm on the Community Adaptability, Resiliency, and Environmental Justice Committee, but we shorten that and we call ourselves the CARE-J Committee. And some good news today. I think I've really been looking forward to this meeting, but my best friend and I kicked off like our Hot Girl Summer workout. So that's my good news. We're determined.
Great, good for you. And now the other co-chair, Inez Ortega, was unable to join us today. She has submitted she provided us with an audio introduction. We're gonna go ahead and do that at the end of the introductions, just so we can keep this flow going. All right, so next I'm going to move on to the Energy Committee to Armando Lopez. I'm sorry, it's hard for me to follow it, but there you are. It's hard for me to follow where people are on the screen. Go ahead, Armando.
Hi, my name is Armando. I'm a co-chair on the Energy Committee. I work at a small battery startup here in Denver called Iontra, and my background is in material science of renewable energy materials. So right now I'm doing chemistry of next generation lithium ion. Yeah, I'm really passionate about new energy technologies, bit of a techno optimist in general, and just excited to see, new options get explored, as well as, age-old tried and true options is mobilizing people and getting everyone on the same page as to how to employ solutions. Piece of good news, I guess I'll just refer to kind of an abstract piece of good news that, I see a lot of climate headlines that, are often like pieces of bad news that often get me kind of worried, but then simultaneously I'll see, pieces of good news in the tech news and, things that, miraculous things that some of the leading minds are doing in that field. And, that's some of my good news is, the most brilliant minds in the world are working on awesome solutions every day. So.
Thank you so much. And Anna McDevitt, the other coach.
Well said, Rondo. Hey, y'all, my name's Anna McDevitt. I prefer she, her pronouns, please. And I work for the Sierra Club. I'm our senior campaign rep for the Beyond Coal campaign. I'm based here in Denver, but I cover Colorado and New Mexico in my work. And my piece of good news is I also got vaccinated this weekend. And so I just scheduled my first couple flights for some weddings that got rescheduled from last summer that I'm so excited to see friends and family at. So feeling pumped.
Congratulations. Thank you. All right, so moving on to our Science and Research Committee, Lisa Reyes-Mason.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. So happy to be here. I am an associate professor at DU's Graduate School of Social Work. All of my research and teaching within social work is grounded in the social justice aspects of weather extremes and the climate crisis. And for our social work profession, I co-lead one of our 13 grand challenges for the profession, the grand challenge to create social responses to a changing environment. I'm so happy to be with you and be co-chairing science and research. And I have a prop for my good news. So I'm working on campus today, which I'm really happy about. And on campus, my office is really close to Dieter's Chocolates. And so I was able to get my chocolate covered Oreo fix to take home with me, which will also be good news for my my teenage daughter. She'll be happy about that. So happy to be with you.
Great. Thank you for that delicious good news. And next, our other co-chair of science and research is Jay Lemry.
Hey guys, Jay Lemry, professor of emergency medicine at the University of Colorado School of Medicine. I co-direct the Climate and Health program, which is a new program there. And very interested in just sort of the aspects of climate change on human health. That's been some of my work. And good news is this week we've been able to sort of get greenlit to have 5 physician fellows in climate and health science policy to launch for next year. So we're going to have them kind of nationally based, but through CU, through Denver, and then basically create climate doctors. We don't quite know what that means yet, so maybe we can talk more about that, but basically healthcare providers facile on some of these issues. So we're stoked about that.
That's exciting. I think we all look forward to learning more about that. Thank you. Moving on to our Resource Management Committee, Lori Matthews.
Hi, everyone. Lori Matthews, co-chair with Margaret of the Resource Management Committee. I work for Global Dental Relief, so not too related to this, but I've kept my career was doing energy, natural resource policy. I had the honor of leading the state park system for 10 years, worked on getting the Great Outdoors Colorado Amendment passed, and have devoted my civic duties since then, still in the natural resource and energy field. So I'm delighted to be here and thank you all. And my good news is that today's my birthday.
Happy birthday.
Great way to spend the birthdays, kicking off something important. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you. And our other co-chair is Margaret McRoberts.
Happy birthday, Lori. I didn't know that. Yes, I'm Margaret, and it's great to meet all of you and have a chance to be part of this group. I have a bit of a varied background. At the moment, I have my own consulting doing my own contracting work, and I work part-time with Good Business Colorado doing environmental policy. And then I'm project manager for a group called Rocky Mountain High Plains Food Collaborative, and we're trying to set up a regional based food system that has values such as social equity and regenerative agriculture and looking at renewable energy. And my background is I've worked in sustainable consumption and production. I've taught sustainable business and economics at a university in Germany. And I also, my husband and I had an organic peach orchard, and I worked at the National Park Service in Intermountain region as sustainability coordinator and then for the DC office. So I'm excited to be here and looking at resources and how we can bring green space and other important topics to our city. So thanks, everyone. Oh, and my good news, I'm excited that the pumpkin seedlings that we planted in our little cold frame survived this cold snap. We were a little worried we had been too overzealous in planting them. So found that out this morning.
Good things to look forward to. Thank you. Moving on to sustainable transportation. The first co-chair I have here is Stuart Anderson.
Thanks, Grace. I'm Stuart Anderson. I work for Transportation Solutions. We're a transportation management association serving Southeast Denver. And let me see here. My focus has always been on sustainable transportation. Fresh out of college in LA, I dove right into sustainable transportation. I've been doing it for 35 years. And I think that my good news is really good news for me, because we in our industry have been advocating for a long time to have an employer trip reduction rule in Colorado, which would encourage employers to promote transit use, biking, and walking, and address some of the glaring issues like employers who will provide a parking space but won't offer a transit pass in lieu of the parking. So we're hoping to create a more equitable solution. We've been at this for years, and next week we are finally going to have the Air Pollution Control Division issue the first draft language of the actual rule. So it's a great accomplishment, and it really, I think, will have a tremendous impact on trip generation around our area and encourage alternative modes.
And do you have a piece of good news, or was that the good news?
That was my good news.
Okay, that is the good news. Great. Thank you. All right, and Naomi Amaha.
Thanks, Grace. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Naomi Amaha, as Grace mentioned. I am Stuart's co-chair on the Sustainable Transportations Committee. I recently joined the Denver Foundation as our Director of Policy and Government Affairs, so very excited to embark in that new space. I was very fortunate to serve as a member of the Climate Action Task Force, and specifically our transportation work group to help co-create the solutions that are in the Climate Action Task Force's report. So excited to work with you all. And my piece of good news is that I was able to get in my first hike at a really long time yesterday, and I was able to enjoy one of our Colorado state parks. So thank you all, and look forward to working with you.
Thanks, and congratulations on the hike. And now we're on to our at-large members, and I'll first call on Marcel McClinton. Hello, Marcel. You are on mute right now. And I know he was having technical difficulties, so maybe I'll go to Aileen first.
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Aileen McCallum. I live in the Southmore Park South neighborhood near I-25 in Hamden in District 4. And I also work at the Downtown Denver Partnership. I've been there for about 15 years. And there I've held a number of different roles and responsibilities, but right now I oversee our member programming, which includes the development of our leadership program and our urban exploration program. And all of our programming that my team and I get done is meant to help everyone understand the value and importance of urban areas and center cities and what they can bring to our city and our urban economies, or not just urban economies, but our economies in general. And then my piece of good news is that my younger sister, who I'm very close to, is coming for a visit. She's gonna come this weekend and stay for 2 weeks with us while she works remotely. And we get to have some good sister time together. So very exciting.
Wonderful, thank you. And I see Marcel was able to rejoin. Marcel, are you able to come off mute and say hello? And if you're not, it's okay. You can just put a note in the chat when you're able to be on.
Yeah,
There you are.
I just had to move. I'm sorry about that. So I'm Marcel McClinton. I recently moved to Denver in 2020 from Houston, Texas. I work for the Peace Jam Foundation. We are a global nonprofit who partner with Nobel Peace Prize laureates and civically engaged students. I'm out of breath from moving, but I'm really excited to provide a youth perspective. I'm in college right now. My background is in gun violence prevention organizing primarily, but I've done a lot of work around sustainability in Houston and looking forward to bringing this work to Denver and learning from you all.
And do you have a piece of good news for us?
Yes, that I was accepted to take some extra classes this summer at MSU so I can graduate a semester early. I'm really excited about that and hoping to get done with college soon.
Good for you. Congratulations. And now we're on to our city council representative, Paul Cashman. Mr. Cashman.
Oh, thanks, Grace. Great to be here. My name is Paul Cashman. I represent South Denver District 6 on Denver City Council. I'm approaching the midpoint of my second term. Was honored to carry Councilman Clark's books as he did the heavy lifting to help establish the Office of Climate Action. And I just look forward to being here and help in any way I can from the council perspective and moving the ball along. So thanks a lot. Good to be here.
Did you want to share a piece of good news too?
Oh, a piece of good news, sure. I've got my eldest son lives up in Alaska, has for a long time, and he was terribly sick for much of the past year. And the good news is he is now terribly healthy once again. So I'm celebrating that right now.
That's a lot to celebrate. Thank you.
Yes,
now
ma'am.
I see that we have some of our staff liaisons here. I'd like to give them a moment to say hello as well. So first, actually, I'll go to Taylor, who is ably leading us through this meeting today.
Hey everyone, I'm Taylor Mollers with the Office of Climate Action, Sustainability and Resiliency. I run our Sustainable Neighborhoods program and also work on a lot of our communications and engagement work, and am your tech liaison for these meetings. So if you have any Zoom questions, feel free to chat me. Hopefully this will go nice and smoothly.
Do you have any good news, Taylor?
My good news, my younger sister is also visiting. She is fully vaccinated as of this week, so she'll be coming out here in a couple of weeks to stay for about a week, and we can just hang out, get that sister time.
Exciting, thank you. Sonrisa Lucero.
Hey everybody, I'm Sonrisa Lucero with the Climate Office, and I am the staff liaison to the CARE-J committee. So I'm here to help out and rep that crew. I am really pumped and hyped today because I was in the Green Lining Institute conference for a good part of the day, and they have a DJ during their breaks who's playing all the best music from the 90s and all my times kind of stuff. So I got Tennessee, Arrested Development kind of stuff on the brain, and a lot of other really great like jams from my youth. So I'm a little talking louder than normal today and a little faster and a little bouncier. So yeah, that's my good news.
Thank you, Sonrisa. Mike.
Hi, everyone. I'm Mike Salsberry. I work as the staff liaison on the Sustainable Transportation Committee. And my day job is working on all things related to electric vehicles and electrifying mobility and how we get reduced GHG from the transportation sector. So really excited to be working with all the great people on that committee. My piece of good news, as Grace mentioned, we're heading back to the office soon. And I actually missed my commute because that was my awesome biking exercise. And I never bike unless I have some place to go to. I don't get out and ride the bike on the weekend for fun. So having a destination like the office to go to, I'm really excited because I get to actually get exercise outside again. So yay for that.
Thanks, Mike. Johnny.
Hey everyone, I'm Jonathan Rogers, but you can call me Johnny. I'm the renewable energy specialist for the city and the staff liaison to the Energy Committee. It's my job to help transition the whole city and community to 100% renewable electricity as quickly and equitably as possible. My good news is that my wife and I have planned our first camping trip of the season. We'll be getting out on Saturday down in the Pikes Peak area and just can't wait to be sleeping outside again.
Thanks, Johnny. Susan.
Hi, everybody. I'm Susan Renaud. I'm the staff liaison to the Resource Management Group. And my job with CASTR is working on circular economy initiatives. And then I also currently manage the Certifiably Green Denver program, which is our business sustainability program. And my good news is that my family is actually planning to meet up for the first time all together in a really long time this summer to celebrate kind of a landmark birthday for my older brother. So really looking forward to that. Thanks.
Thank you. Liz.
Hi, everyone. I'm Liz Babcock. I'm a manager in CASR and work on a lot of different things. I have an amazing team to work with on climate planning and EVs, renewables, buildings, and workforce development, all kinds of great work happening. My good news is that I will also be able to see my family this summer. We're taking a trip. My husband and I are both vaccinated. We're going to take a trip with our daughter to go see family, including my mom, who we haven't seen in a very, very long time.
Thank you. And I know Taylor, if you could queue up Inez's introduction, please. And while we're doing that, let's give a quick round of applause to our interpreters, Lucy and Shamara, who are sharing that job today. So thank you very much. Taylor, are you able to play Inez's introduction? And
Yes.
hopefully everyone who does speak English, I hope you have chosen the English channel because our interpreter will interpret this for us.
Yep, so just to reiterate, if you haven't chosen your language channel, please do, whether it's English or Spanish. We're gonna play Inez's video in Spanish and our lovely interpreters will provide it in English as well. So make sure you have your channel selected or else you might be a little confused. So here we go.
Aquí va.
Hola, buenas tardes. Mi nombre es Inés Barrales
Hello, good
Ortega.
afternoon. My name
Vivo en el área de
is Renaud
Suancia.
Ortega. I
Ya
live
tengo
in
23 años
area de
viviendo en
Suancia.
esta
I
área.
have
Soy la
23
primera
years living in
generación
this area. I the
y
first generation.
trabajo en el de Grow
I
House
work
de
in
promotora. Y
I'm a
mi trabajo
promoter.
me permite hacer lo que me gusta, que es
My
estar
work
con la
that allow me to
comunidad,
do what I love to do
ver
is to
y
do
llevar
with food.
servicios a mi
Go
comunidad.
and give services to my community.
Okay,
May I
thank you.
have a
Thanks
quick
very much.
suggestion? May I interject for a quick second?
Yes, go ahead, Sonrisa.
Unlike the normal interpretation, when it's a speaker here, it would normally mute the other voice a little bit. And so because they were simultaneous over each other from the video, I think we heard the interpretation at equal volume as the video, and it may have made it very difficult for people to hear. I'm wondering if the interpreters might be willing just to kind of repeat what they remember from the introduction so we can understand it.
Yes, definitely I can. She was saying that introducing her full name, and she is the first generation living here in the United States. That she loved to working with food as well. That's why her job allow her to do what she loved to do, is to help the community.
Thank you. Thanks very much. And let me just make sure that I have not neglected anybody from the introductions. Has everybody here had a moment to speak? I'm sorry. Do we say yes? We've got everybody? Well, then my next piece of good news is that we are on schedule, which is always a good thing. So let me see where we're at actually with our agenda. All right. So wonderful. Thank you for all that. The next piece of our agenda is actually to take a look at our bylaws. You have all received that. You should have all received that a month and a half ago. And I actually don't know how much of this was discussed in your committees. The Science and Research Committee did reach out with one minor wording change to the section that describes their committee. Does anybody else here recall any issues or concerns, red flags, anything in the bylaws that your committees discussed or that we need to clarify? And you can use the raise hand function. For those of you who are on screen, you can just raise a hand as well. Yes, Lori, go ahead.
I think, Grace, we had a question about whether air quality was in our section, and at least in the version I have, it shows air quality, and I think you had asked that we not take that on. So under resource management.
Right, actually, and I'm glad that Liz is here. Liz, I'm going to be pulling up the bylaws in just a moment to bring them on screen. Would you mind commenting about air quality and how our office engages with DDP, the Department of Public Health and Environment, and their air quality team?
And I also want to say we don't have any problem with the change. I just want to have the clarification.
Absolutely, it's worth discussing.
Sure, so I can provide just information for discussion purposes. So we are working very closely with the Department of Public Health and Environment in Denver. So that is our public health agency within the city and county of Denver. Within that agency is the Environmental Quality Division, and that division has responsibility for things like air quality and water quality, land quality, soil issues, and things like that. So we work really closely with the air and water team on advocacy to the state for more stringent air quality protections, rules and regulations at the Air Quality Control Commission. And that group is also responsible for new programming and activities around air monitoring in Denver. They partner a lot with the state on air monitoring. So they launched an air monitoring program at Denver Public Schools, focused especially on those schools that are near major sources of pollution, like near major roadways. So they have a lot of policy and programmatic work already happening in that group. And so our role is to kind of liaise with them, to communicate out to the public about what the city is doing to advocate for improved air quality. And then climate policy is kind of a space that overlaps with air quality, because when you're reducing greenhouse gas emissions, you're typically also reducing other kinds of pollution that contribute to poor air quality in our region. Not in every case, but in the majority of cases. So there is an overlap between our agencies, but they are the lead and they have a lot of the regulatory authority in the city's laws, in the city's ordinances around enforcing air quality regulations and things like that.
Thanks for that, Liz. And if I can take a moment, I'll go, if I can figure out how to do this. Am I allowed to share a screen, Taylor?
You should be.
Okay. All right, well, in any, oh, there, I clicked on it. I think I'm going to do this right. Here we go. Are you
Yeah.
Are you seeing something that looks like the bylaws?
Yes.
Oh, good, because I can't see it. So what you see here is, Lori, this section that says resource management, I think what you're referring to is that it does say improve air and water quality. And perhaps the question here is, how much of a focus should air quality be for this particular committee? And I would say, while it is improved air quality is certainly a intentional byproduct of the types of policies and programs this committee might explore, I would perhaps suggest it's not the leading goal for those particular actions. Say green infrastructure, increased green space, more trees, reduce waste, landfill waste. All of these actions can contribute to air quality, but we, as Liz was saying, we do look to the Department of Public Health and Environment to lead on actual air quality monitoring and specific targeted programs. So I think it's fine for us to leave that terminology in there, as long as the understanding is that the focus of this committee is perhaps on the actions that would contribute to improved air quality, not air quality itself. Does that help?
And then maybe just building off of that, and building off of what Liz had mentioned, because I have been doing various work related to air quality. And so we're just curious, is that something that we should even bring up per se as its own topic, or it seems that what we're hearing from you is that if there's co-benefits for the other major topics that we're focusing on that happen to address air quality, that's fine, but we shouldn't be looking at anything from the perspective of let's address air quality point source. Is that correct?
I think that's correct. I think that's a good way of describing it.
Okay, thank you.
And if hopefully, again, you can see on the screen, and hopefully I've made it big enough for you to see, you'll see the change here that has been recommended by the Science and Research Committee. And it's to add these words, public health and applied science, and human and natural resources. It looks like Lisa has her hand raised.
Yes, we had just a quick fix there. I think we had sent applied social science.
Oh, okay. I will fix that right now.
Thank you.
There we go. We are making changes in real time. And again, it's hard for me to see, but if it looks like if you do the raise hand function, I will be able to see that. One thing that I wanted to bring up is that this document does reference SAC co-chairs. We have not selected co-chairs for this committee, for the SAC. And as soon as you started meeting in your standing committees, I immediately thought that asking any of you to also co-chair this committee might be too much. That led me to my next thought, which is, well, if we want co-chairs, maybe we should make the at-large members the co-chairs, because they are not also co-chairs of committees. If you wouldn't mind taking a few minutes to discuss, and so that I can see you, I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing because we don't need to look at that. So Aileen and Marcel, how would you like to be the co-chairs? And which is something of a joke. We don't necessarily need co-chairs. This can be a discussion forum, and I'll be working with you consistently on the agenda. Is probably going to stay pretty much the same as what we have had today. So perhaps that's the open discussion here is, does this body believe that it needs co-chairs? Let's answer that question first. If the answer is yes, then we'll talk about how to do that. Would anyone like to comment?
I mean, Grace, I would say, do you think we need co-chairs? Because that ultimately it's going to be what work needs to be done, and where does that co-chair professional boundary lie?
I'm a little bit on the fence. Again, I mean, I am interested in having us getting going and seeing where this takes us and what the needs are. And I wouldn't mind assessing it at a later time. If our agenda truly does stay similar to today's agenda, where we are basically reporting out from our committees and perhaps at times having meaty, weighty discussions about particular issues, then we don't need a co-chair to do the same thing that you're doing at your committees, which is truly setting an agenda. What are the subjects that you were discussing at your standing committee meetings? That isn't the same as what we're doing here. But if we need people to really take command of the conversation in a way that makes it clear that this is your discussion, not mine, that could be a reason to have co-chairs. Or to, instead of calling them co-chairs, maybe we assign people as facilitators and really say, these are the people who are facilitating these discussions. So again, it's not me running your meetings, it's still your meeting. This is where I am with it at this time. Lori, I'm sorry, Armando had his hand up and then we'll go to you.
Yeah, I think you kind of answered my questions of what the responsibilities explicitly of the co-chair would be. Especially if your thought was that it would be too much. Well, what about it would be too much? Like, what would those responsibilities be?
Well, again, I think I had that thought before it was really clear how these meetings would be oriented. You know, what would our discussions be about? And again, I think that if you compare this role to your standing committees, you're really truly working with your liaison to say, what is the substance of what we're discussing today, like at our next meeting? Whereas these meetings, the bulk of the function is going to be the reporting out from your committees and discussions on how you can cross-pollinate with each other, how you can share ideas, how maybe an idea from the science committee needs to influence something happening, a discussion happening at the transportation committee. So maybe that the weight of creating an agenda isn't as great for this group. And so therefore, if the co-chair's role really is to facilitate the discussion in the moment, maybe that wouldn't be too much to ask. Lori, you were next.
I just want this to be as efficient as possible, and we're doing a lot of work trying to figure out how to co-chair. I think it's delightful to have you run these meetings. I think it's to the point. You're going to keep us on task, and if we decide in a while we need a co-chair because we're doing things where you need arm's length from staff, I get that, but I'm really comfortable. I think it's actually really good to have direct interaction with you chairing this right now.
Okay, and I see some agrees coming in the chat. Is anyone else raising a hand or would like to comment? Stuart.
Stuart, I just wanted to share that there is a perception issue, and I would rather have this being led by non-city staff, technically, than city staff. Not that you guys are going to be forcing us in any particular direction, but the thought that that our at-large members will be kind of floating between different meetings, I assume, that they'll have that understanding collectively.
No, the at-large members are simply members of their committees. They do not float. They do not by job function float between meetings.
Okay, well, that clarifies the point.
Aileen.
Yeah, I would. The only thing, just in my role at the partnership as a staff member, like running a lot of different committees, it can take, I absolutely see the argument just for ease, kind of what Lori was saying, to have you run this committee. And then I very much see Stuart's point where it can take a little pressure off of you, and take, like, you wouldn't get in a situation where like the staff, you would be less in a position where you would be seen as the staff member, setting the course of the discussion. What I really like what you said was that role of the facilitator, and I agree with you. I think whoever is the co-chair, if we went that direction, doesn't need to have a large administrative role, but it does help you, Grace, set that boundary between the committee itself and the staff. And I would encourage you to think of how can this person, co-chair, facilitator, whatever, be a tool for you, help you create that space that you need to be a really good committee administrator and staff administrator of this committee.
All right, thank you for that. Kira, I see your hand up.
Yeah, I feel like I'm just going to echo everything that was already said. But as much as we can have community people and people with the lived experiences, not saying that, none of the city folk do, but the reason why we're on the committee is because of our experience professionally, personally in this space. Like, as much as we can bring that perspective into all levels of this process, I think the better, the more authentic it will be, the easier that we can just think through different perspectives. I'm all for it, especially if it could be our at-large members. I'm a little biased because Marcel's like on our committee, so I'm for that all the way.
All right, thank you. Well, then let's move to that next part of the discussion. Then, I do feel like I'm starting to hear a consensus that we perhaps would benefit from having actual co-chairs from the committee facilitating the meetings. If that's the case, do you think it makes sense then for those people to automatically be the two at large because they don't have other co-chair responsibilities? Or do you think that the mayor should be choosing the co-chairs from among all of the members? Aileen, is your hand still up or up again?
Oh, I didn't mean for it to be up, but I will comment.
Okay.
I'm comfortable with whatever approach you want. And whatever approach this group wants. I think, sorry, my kids just got home. I'm comfortable with whatever approach.
Okay.
It's probably not that big of a deal, Grace, but I do think that, with our co-chairs, our constituents is our committee. And I wonder if they're trying to represent two different committees. And I don't see this as being particularly a political thing, but I do think maybe it's best practice to have the at-large members have the mandate to be chairs for this committee, as opposed to one of us who is also beholden to, 1/6 of this committee and perhaps agendas as they evolve, that could be a conflict of interest, potentially.
All right, that's a great perspective. Thank you. Marcel, I see your hand up.
Yeah, I think after taking in what Stuart, Eileen, and Kira have said, I would agree that maybe co-chairs as facilitators would be beneficial to this body being efficient. I also would say that I think us as at-large members is kind of like the easiest just route to go, with us being able to kind of be unbiased, at least in our titles.
All right, that's interesting. Now, am I hearing a consensus around this? It sounds like I am, but it's okay for there to be dissenting voices if anyone would like to give a different opinion.
Grace,
Well, I
this is
can tell
Naomi.
you- Go ahead.
Lisa,
I
go
apologize.
ahead.
I sorry.
Oh, that's Naomi. Sorry, go ahead, Naomi.
Yeah. No,
And
I
then Lisa
apologize.
on deck.
I dialed in, so I couldn't raise my hand. My only thought was, as long as I think our at-large members are comfortable taking that role, which it sounds like, I'm comfortable with that. The only other thought I have is if there are any co-chairs that want to self-nominate or potentially serve in that capacity, definitely would welcome that. But if our at-large members are comfortable with that, that's something that I'm supportive of. So I just wanted to say that since I'm not on screen.
Okay. Lisa, you're next.
I think I'm thinking about down the road. Like I fully support, I'm not interested in being co-chair. I fully support if the at-larges and if folks are at-larges and they're willing to do that. I'm thinking more about down the road, if this is policy and precedent, will that, is there an unintended consequence perhaps of who then is considered for an at-large position if it becomes by definition then the co-chairs? So I just wanted to offer that up is that a potential down the road for a future composition of the council? And maybe that's okay. Maybe that's something that we want to be a factor, that is the new policy. I just wanted to offer that as something to think about.
I was wondering too, if perhaps maybe since we've introduced the idea, maybe what we would want to do maybe more is focus on what we hope to accomplish through this committee and then how we think we would deliver suggestions we have up the chain and then how all of that works. And I wonder if that would then help us better understand and the at-large team realize if they want that position or not. Because I'm still a little vague, I guess, on how we would, once we've got our subcommittee and we come up with all these great ideas and we've got community engagement and such, how do we move them forward? How does it fit in with this 5-year plan that I think is going to be finished in November? Just wondering if maybe that will help. I keep hearing lately form follows function. So, or function follow, anyways, something like that.
Okay, excellent questions. Anyone else with a comment? Lori, you have your hand up? Yes, I see you now.
I really was resonating with what Lisa said. I think if we make the two at-large co-chairs, we should just say we're doing that this time and that a group can decide anytime who they want, whether it's based on us knowing each other better later and wanting a leader or whether we want to continue with co-chairs. So I say we put them in for a year or two and establish no precedent.
I think that's an interesting compromise, especially because when we look at the actual text of the bylaws themselves, it doesn't specify. We could specify in there, we don't have to. We could frankly make a nomination today to nominate people for that co-chair position and just let it go with that. And again, give a timeline to it. Say, we'll revisit this at the end of 2021. We'll revisit it in 12 months from this meeting. We can make that decision.
Yeah.
So I guess for my purposes, for the text of the bylaws, this doesn't actually change the text, which is great. So maybe if we could have a consensus, why don't we, I might make a suggestion, maybe my last suggestion as a city staff person, but how about we try Aileen and Marcel co-chairing the next meeting and facilitating that. Would that be a good way to start? I see many nods. All right, wonderful. Do we feel like we have enough conclusion that we can move on? All right, great. So with that, it sounds like there are no other major changes to, in fact, no changes except for these minor wording changes to the bylaws. Am I hearing that? Do we have consensus on that?
Grace?
Yes.
Our committee, we wanted to run the description of our committee past the committee, and we didn't do that in the first meeting.
Okay.
Could we take a little time in ensuring that
Yes.
we all have a common perception of what we are.
Yes, we can do that. And then would you be then prepared to bring that in advance of the next meeting so that perhaps in the next meeting we can come to conclusion and actually vote to adopt the bylaws? Yeah. That'd be great. And by the way,
yes,
this does not, whether or not the bylaws have been voted on, does not stop you from doing your work. This is not the Board of Public Health. This is a different type of public body, of board and commission. We are able to proceed with our work without having that document. This is more of a charter that grounds us in our work, but it also helps inform the people who will take over for us at other times. And I feel like I saw someone else's hands up.
It was me.
Oh, hi, Kira, go ahead.
Hey, and I think we want to do the same thing as well. I have some suggestions on things that we want to change, mostly taking out like the specific points that we're going to be influencing, buckets that we're going to be influencing, since we are really going to be working collaboratively with all of the committees. Instead of, creating a whole one-page document of all the buckets we're going to be in, we'll just take it out and make it more general.
That would be fine. And so the way the Science and Research Committee did this is they just emailed me their wording changes. So when you're ready for that, whether you send me that directly or if you give that to your staff liaison and they provide it to me, however that works for your committee is fine. If we could just try to aim for having all of those changes, hopefully at least 1 week prior to our next meeting, that would be best, because then I can actually send out an amended document to all of you to review before the meeting. Wonderful, thank you. Does that conclude our discussion on the bylaws? Great, thank you. So let's go back to our agenda. And now finally, it is time for our committee reports. This is what I'm most interested in. So if it's all right with you, I will go through this again in alphabetical order by committee, beginning with buildings and homes. And we are still on track, which is fantastic. So with the amount of time we have allotted, you've got about 7 to 8 minutes per committee to share out. If you don't take all that time, that's fine. But buildings and homes, let's go to you folks first.
Yeah, hi.
I will take notes.
Okay, great. Stephen, did you want to share, or Stephen, my co-chair, had mentioned sharing a bit of our presentation from our last meeting, but I think that could get a little cumbersome. Stephen, what do you think?
I don't have the ability to share, but I was just thinking, Aaron, we could just go through the major topics.
Okay. Yeah.
So what we did actually at our first meeting was, apologies, we have a major event tomorrow, so I had a staff person in my office. So what we did was Katrina Magnan, who's our staff liaison, took us through the work that her office is doing already, just to kind of get our committee all on the same page with what are the different programs that are going on. And so the first thing that we talked about was how, everything that the organization is working on, I guess, Grace, the acronym Salazar, is that how you're
Sorry, it's CASR.
CASR, okay. So that, one of the things that we want to make sure that we keep in mind as we're going through this is centering all of the work that we do around equity. So what she reviewed the 80 by 50 climate action plan. And so, how are the existing homes and buildings performing? And what do we need to do in the way of energy savings to hit that 50% energy savings in buildings by 2050? So with the benchmarking program, they figured out that, we're not hitting that goal trajectory the current trajectory actually has us going up. However, they have figured out that a lot of that is due to the existing or to new buildings coming online, not all to the existing buildings. That existing buildings are doing some work around reducing their energy usage, but with all the new buildings that are coming on board, of course, that just means more energy is being used. So using all of this information and data to work through the programming that they're doing and of the building work with the Climate Action Task Force that was completed in 2020. And through that came the net zero energy new buildings implementation plan, as well as the Energized Denver Task Force, of which Aaron and I both are members of that. And so that task force is taking what came out of the Climate Action Task Force and figuring out what we can do to help buildings reach performance of reducing their energy. So that task force started in January, and we're hoping to have our work done in June of 2020. There's 26 members, very diverse group, just like this one. It is streamed on Facebook. So if you ever want to see what we're doing, you're welcome to do that. So we just went through the goals and all of that around existing buildings, what kind of by sector, and then some of the programmings. Aaron, you want to start with benchmarking?
Well, sure. Yeah. And this gets to a couple of things. I just wanted to reiterate my appreciation for our group, as well as I'm sure it's been the same for other groups. It's just a really strong focus on equity from the outset. We've spent a lot of time talking about how that goes into our decision making and our recommendations, and it's just it's great to be a part of that. We also had a lot of discussion around, and this is what I'm going to share, is kind of where our discussions went in our last meeting. Background of the problem, which I think was always a good place to start. Greenhouse gas, 49% of greenhouse gases are coming from buildings. And so, you know, this is a very large sector of what we're trying to attack here. We talked a lot about what else is happening in the space. So a lot of things at the state level, as far as proposed legislation. We looked at things that are happening around the country in terms of other places where they've had successful policies around greenhouse gases and buildings. And so, our first session was really just kind of a very broad view of here's what we're trying to tackle, here's what other folks are trying to do, here's what's been successful. Then we went through and we talked about, like Stephen was saying, some other programs through smart leasing, CPACE, other green building ordinances around the country, like I mentioned in, sorry, just flipping through our slide deck here. One close to home in Boulder, Seattle, Portland, San Francisco, San Jose, and then a bunch on the East Coast as well, Boston, New York City. And so we're trying to do a really good literature review of what else is out there, what's happening, what's successful, and what's not successful. Did I miss anything in that, Stephen?
So we also went through the, she discussed what the city's doing around the electrification research that the city's doing. And then we also discussed other ordinances like the Green Buildings Ordinance and how we've been able to take something that wasn't really working and turn it into something that could work. And then something that is really kind of near and dear to the group too, I think, is the Energized Denver Awards, recognizing those buildings and organizations that are doing great work and achieving some of the great things around sustainability within their organization.
Yeah. So I think it's a good overview of
the group's very busy. Grace, your team there at the buildings group is very busy.
That they are. That is true. Thank you for that summary. Anything else you wanted to add? Okay, then next, Kira with CareJ.
Perfect. So for our first meeting, first of all, super excited to work with all the folks in that group. There's just an amazing group of people from all kinds of backgrounds, from everywhere, who are really, really committed to, first and foremost, justice in this work. And so we really wanted to spend a lot of time in that, and learning about, what is this process, getting an overview of your office as well, get an overview of the fund, learn more about the individual committees that we're going to be working with, and then also start thinking about, how do we want to conduct ourselves as a committee as well. And so beginning to talk through, what are things that we bring into this space? What are the perspectives that we bring into this space? What are our backgrounds in that work? And then from there, starting to compile, what are our truths? What are our foundation pieces? How are we going to be operating in this space as this committee and working with everyone else? So we began putting together that information and really looking over the bylaws and just starting to dream of what can be, what our community can be, what our committee can do and support all of our neighbors. And let me go through that note. As well as, just creating a safe and inclusive culture for everyone involved. From that, we're going to be, again, just further defining the bylaws, solidifying that, and then working towards, firmly establishing our norms and how we're going to be interacting. How can we best share best practices with all of our other committees out here? And that's us.
Thanks, Kira. That's interesting. And I think we'll learn a little bit from the Science and Research Committee as well. These are two committees that clearly need and want to have influence and to be in a supporting role for the other committees as well, right? And there's really no subject that these two committees don't touch. So thank you for that.
Right.
Okay, now
excited about that.
Yeah, let's hear from the Energy Committee.
Awesome. Yeah, we had a great first meeting as well, co-chairing with Anna and our staff liaison, Johnny. We did a lot to set norms and practices for our committee, which is a great, pretty diverse group of people representing a lot of different interests and different takes on how to go about this monumental task of decarbonization. So as you mentioned, these other committees will reach out and touch, and we'll have this kind of like, synapse neuron effect where we're all touching and learning and informing from each other. And the Energy Committee is no different. So our focus is on the decarbonization of the grid, which is, a monumental task and has a lot to deal with, private interests as well as, public utilities. So we ended up talking a lot about Excel's plan for renewable energy and carbon-free electricity. And Johnny came out with a really great renewable energy breakdown of the timelines for the carbon reduction trajectory. The 80% by 2030 is what we're looking at for Excel, and then the community target for 100% carbon-free electricity aspiration by 2050, which is, let's all just appreciate the scope of what we're talking about. So in 2019, Denver was still at 77% reported fossil-based electricity. So, making it in 30 years, the grid often I hear is like trying to steer an iceberg if you're trying to change it. So like, changing from 77% fossil fuel, natural gas, coal sources to 100% renewable in 30 years is still, a monumental task. And that's what we're looking at, kind of trying to, inform the process, get people involved in, the current, distributed energy, solar, like community initiatives. So we're still having conversations about scope and exactly how to go about this and what the best use of funds are. Because I think one number I heard that I learned recently, that to operate Excel's grid is somewhere in the neighborhood of $2 billion a year. So if that is the operating cost for, our grid in Colorado, 40 million a year in perspective, though it sounds a lot to us, is really just a drop in their bucket. So we're kind of focusing on the kind of community adaptation side of things. So yeah, we had a great first meeting, and we still have a lot to talk about, especially the vision and the scope, and mostly trying to figure out what our metrics are. And I'd love to hear, from the rest of the committee on what they consider success. So like, how do we measure the success of what we're doing? And do we put that into a feedback loop of, trying to improve? So like, down the line, once our terms are up in 2 years, like what do we want to see? What change do we want to see affected? How do we measure the success and the impact? So that's on deck for our May meeting.
Okay, thank you. That was pretty succinct. All right, so that was energy. So then getting my alphabet correct this time, on to resource management, please.
So, I feel we had a really good meeting. We have a very, very diverse group. Just amazing hearing from all the different people and sort of trying to get to know them. We spent a good bit of time on operating and what our best practices were, how we were going to move forward. But I think for us, what distinguishes our committee is just the breadth of topics that only some of them have a natural cohesion. So if I look at the bylaws, we are doing something with air, but we're doing water quality, increasing green space, habitat, improving soil quality, promoting sustainable land use, reducing solid waste generation, and increasing landfill diversion. So for us, I think it's really a matter of sort of figuring out which topics we're going to tackle, in what order, how we're going to tie and the overlaps, how we're going to take topics that are really mainstream here, and then topics that are more adaptation, and how it all is going to tie together. And also, when I look at the climate fund, when we look at the climate fund criteria, they don't always match. There's nothing about landfill or waste that I see in those criteria. So we have a lot of sort of just big focus to figure out. And then I think we're really excited about moving forward. But I think for our committee, getting jump started in the right direction takes a little more thought. Or at least that's what Margaret and I think we're getting together tomorrow to tackle that. We did have one fun idea, which is we're also going to talk about offering a series of field trips, not during our meeting, where people can highlight what they're doing in all those different areas. And I think it's also a way we'll get to know each other. So I want to turn it over with that to, well, I want to say a special thanks to Susan, because our liaison has been really working hard to help us sort all this out. So she's been a real part of this discussion. I want to turn it over to Margaret to elaborate as you will.
Thanks, Lori. Yes, I agree. Thank you, Susan, for all of your help and listening to all of our questions. And yeah, just echoing what Lori said, we focused a lot on decision-making and how we could work respectfully and collaboratively as a group when we got down to narrowing ideas and being open to needing to build consensus and realizing that might take a little time. And then we took a step back and once again looked at all of the complex issues we're looking at and how some are focused on others and some aren't. And so I started a systems map with using the Kumu software. And our goal is to put all of our topics into different buckets and show the feedback loops, not get really in the weeds, but just a cursory level so that at our next meeting, we can really look at what we think should be a focus, and then building off of the opportunity we have right now with the PAYS program that Susan will put forth to our group to really talk about as being our first topic that we would move forward to. But our goal is to really get these different ideas organized and then figure out what our group wants to work on as priorities that also align then what the city is putting forth with initiatives and priorities, so that we could really build out an agenda so people could know what to read ahead of time, and if there's any missing gaps and what we need to bring from, per se, if there's any nonprofits working in this space or other city agencies that we need to liaison with to make sure we have all the information. So we're not reinventing the wheel and at the same time being as effective as possible. So that's kind of where we're at now. And yeah, we'll see where the system maps goes. I'm about 60% done with it. And so I look forward to hearing what our group has to say about it.
Thank you. Thanks so much for that to both of you. Okay, next we are on to science and research.
Great, thank you. I'll just say a quick word about what we suggested for the bylaws actually, and then I'm gonna pass it to Jay for our meeting summary. So our group also for science and research is incredibly diverse in terms of disciplines and sectors. So we have meteorologists, electrochemists, urban ecologists, and then we have co-chairs who are social worker and physician. And we suspect that this, was intentional in terms of keeping the focus on people and equity and justice. And so we wanted to just make sure, as you saw in what we suggested for the bylaws, that things like public health and applied social science and human needs were equally represented in our description as well. So just a little bit of background on that. And Jay, I'll pass it over to you for more from our first meeting.
Awesome. Thanks, Lisa. So same with was a lot of it was housekeeping, organizing, understanding people's backgrounds. And then, thinking about what do we want to prioritize and what do we want to work on together. Some of the concepts were research that we would undertake based on existing programs versus new ideas. And then this very exciting, albeit broad mandate to help other committees and respond to different questions that the other committees may have. And I think to Grace's point, understanding our domain was something that we go off on a tangent and be like, oh, wait, well, that's actually buildings that does that. We should kind of rein that in when we talked about like data on commercial buildings or electric chargers or things like that. I mean, these are a lot of people bringing forth their ideas. We talked about the importance of looking at other cities and understanding what has been successes, but also failed policies or maybe lackluster policies that have gone down. Who were their players, what were the initiatives, what were the data sets they used, and then of course that led to conversation about metrics. And as Lisa just alluded to, we wanted to make sure we had natural science metrics, but also social impact metrics. How do we measure social vulnerability? Moving forward, some of the initiatives, we were like, okay, let's go out and have some listening sessions and try to understand what it is that the opportunities are, because maybe we don't even know. So whether that's about climate adaptations within the communities or emerging technologies, we have a couple people that are one working and one formerly working for NREL. So understanding like what technologies should we be thinking about, and then thinking into other networks to bring forth those new ideas. We talked a little bit about C40, the nonprofit bringing forth the 40 biggest mega cities, but there's also a lot more than the 40. So that would be something that maybe we should think about that. And then finally, just collecting a member survey to say, okay, after this, very eclectic and energetic conversation, okay, afterwards, take some time, send us your thoughts, and then we still have to correlate that to see what are the themes that are really emerging that we can bring into our second meeting to say, okay, this is what really you had said after the fact, and maybe that'll help direct us a little bit more.
That's very interesting. Thank you. Thanks for that. And now finally, transportation.
Thanks, Grace. I have the privilege of working with Naomi, who is incredible. She worked on the Climate Action Task Force and brings a wealth of knowledge to our committee. I'll have to say that the committee was very energized in looking through the different recommendations. In general, the recommendations from the Climate Action Task Force are very innovative, very progressive, and certainly important as we move forward. At our next meeting, we plan to discuss and refine the decision-making criterion to be able to prioritize projects and to ensure that equity is at the front of the decisions. The committee also wanted to ensure a clear sense of expectation of members and how they can engage on matters before the city council that align with the purpose of the committee. Interest was expressed regarding meeting immediate mobility inequities through services in disadvantaged and under-resourced communities. Largely, a big component of what we're looking at is that we're working in an area that has overall been under-addressed and that there are people today that have mobility issues. and that inequities within our transportation system need to change and change quickly. Our region has been downgraded to a serious non-attainment area for ozone this year. Mobile source just moved up to the largest single source of pollution, contributing to that this year. We are facing an additional downgrade to severe if we don't tackle our current pollution problems and to deal with that. Let's see here. We are also very fortunate that that staff has been able to move forward on some of our objectives thus far. Thank you, Mike, for being a great staff member with our committee. There has been a call for projects for the e-bikes, and that has been awarded to 2 organizations. The West Corridor Transportation Management Association is receiving e-bikes to place in Sun Valley with individuals who are mobility challenged and would benefit from an e-bike. So that's an immediate need that we have. Also, the other recipient is the Northeast Transportation Connections, where they are creating a bike library, an e-bike library, and working with communities that kind of follow I-70 east of I-25. So those are 2 projects that have been funded, and that's rather exciting. Mike, it looks like we're going to discuss at our next meeting the idea of expanding the e-bike program to look at cargo bikes, and in particular to look at delivery services that could benefit from the use of an electric cargo bike. So there's various social service organizations, there's groups like Project Angel Heart that delivers food, where we can provide them with an electric bike, cargo bike. We feel that we can reduce emissions and also serve the purpose of equity and support for our community. Let me see here. I got my list that Naomi and I worked on. We have asked staff to speak with the city attorney to reconsider the decision to exclude marketing and education from eligible funding. It's very difficult to launch new services without marketing. It's very difficult to reach out to people without education. And that we don't feel that this committee is solely about buying bikes and giving them away. It has to be about engaging the community. And in other areas, community-based social marketing has been an ideal complement, but that's something that, according to the city attorney, cannot be funded currently. I'm concerned personally about the Montebello microtransit pilot that is coming up. Those types of services are brand new and very different. Engaging that community at the grassroots level is important. Yeah.
Hey, Stuart. So we are going to talk about Climate Protection Fund at the end of the meeting, but just to clarify, no one has said we're not allowed to do marketing and communications. It's more, that's a discussion that we need to have and how we would measure and report on that, given the requirements of the fund to directly use the money to directly reduce emissions as one of the primary goals. So we can talk about that more in that section.
Okay, that sounds good. It was a misunderstanding on my part that it had been.
That's okay. That's why we're here.
So we are excited to move forward. We are excited to address these immediate needs. There's a lot of complementary efforts happening, like the completing the bike path network throughout our city and other efforts. The council just passed a trip reduction requirement for new development that is emerging now. And I mentioned earlier that the state is working on a trip reduction ordinance for employers to develop commute programs to promote alternatives. That would become law if it gets through this process by January of next year. And it will address all employers with 100 or more employees. So now I've talked too much, but Naomi, I wanted to leave some for you as well if you have items to chime in with.
No, I think you covered the key points of our meeting. I think similar to the other committees, people are really energized and just really want to have a true understanding of what it is that they will act on and the scope of each of the respective committees. So we're going to dig a little bit deeper into the recommendations in the Climate Action Task Force's report at our next meeting as well, and then also really dig into what our decision-making process will be. So I'm happy to hear others are having those conversations and would love to just, have a space to share what's working for others in terms of figuring out how they'll decide on moving different initiatives forward.
Great. Thanks so much to all of you. And I have two questions to pose to you as part of this section. First, a number of you actually mentioned a couple of strategies you're already implementing that could be useful to others. So my first question to you is, are there any communication or meeting management strategies that have worked well for you that you'd like to share with others, or any pitfalls you've already encountered? So I heard about the survey of members afterwards, which sounded really interesting. I'll open the floor to that. Would anyone like to comment?
I can share some things that we're starting to implement. We're just, of course, getting rolling with it, but we're opening up a WhatsApp like group, just as an easy way to share quick updates with everybody and continue to build those relationships between our committee members. And then something fun, because a big tenet of ours is having fun, having like a playlist or something fun that we can kind of go to during our meeting time. So informally, those are some of the tools that we've been using.
Thank you for that. The playlist does sound like fun.
It's essential.
Naomi, looks like Naomi put in the chat using Slack is something that's being discussed. And I believe a couple of the groups have also created Google Docs to start sharing information as well. Any other ideas of things that are working for you, or any concerns that you already have about communicating with each other?
Our committee brought up the importance of establishing this criterion for decision making. All of us have different objectives, and it's hard to pick from this massive list of great recommendations. And so in our next meeting, we will be talking about how do we as a group make decisions collectively.
It sounds like we'll want to hear more about that, about how as that evolves. Any other comments about that? All right, well then let's go to, my next question to you is much more open-ended, and that is, now let's look at the SAC. With all the information that you're getting from your committees, all the discussions that you're having, how do you want to bring that here, right? I know you want to do more than just telling each other, just a report out in every meeting of here's what we've been doing. That is still valuable. You will hear ideas from each other and say, oh, we should definitely connect. But what more do you want this particular body to do? And we'll leave it open there. Now I'm not seeing hands up, which is surprising. Stephen, it looks like you're going to talk. All right, Stephen, then Aileen.
Yeah, I think that one of the things, and Aaron and I were just in chat, and our next committee meeting has snuck up on us, right? And so with schedules, trying to get together in advance of the meeting. And so I think, we need to plan when we have our agenda planning meeting, probably set up with our staff liaison every month so that it's on our calendar recurring. I couldn't get off mute to add that before. I think through this conversation, as we're doing our report outs, if other committees kind of ask questions of Aaron and I about, this, that, what electrification, or what about this? And I think hearing from them as to some of the work that they're doing, and so when we see the energies, then it's figuring out how do we take that information. And so maybe it's that, either the co-chairs need to kind of get together before our next meetings and talk out that kind of separately, or do the staff liaisons kind of help us coordinate some of that? I think that that's something that we'll have to work out as we go through. But I think through this meeting, I feel like that this is where we can kind of say, oh yeah, we're talking about homes and, how do we help people that are living in, apartments or affordable housing or in a certain part of the city, or, whatever it is, how do we connect in with, I can't remember the name of the committee. I apologize. There's so many, but I think it's the one that Jay is part of, right? Talking about people, right? And all of that. So where does that connect in? And so then how do we get offline and talk about that so that our committees can work together? Does that make sense?
I think I understand. So first, and thank you for that. First I saw Aileen and then I see Anna.
Sorry, we're having a moment at my house. Well, so Grace, could you help us understand? I'm pretty sure I was just trying to look for the bylaws again, just to look at them really quick before I commented, but I couldn't find them. Can you remind us like what the action-oriented terms are in the bylaws? Like what do the bylaws say we're here to do?
Sure.
And then it's just a reminder, and then maybe, because yeah, this group should absolutely be more than just like a download of what's happening in the committees, but I couldn't remember like what the bylaws actually said we were tasked at doing, and how then we can think about how to interpret
I can definitely do that. And I'll put a little asterisk by it to say that these bylaws were written with the previous SAC experience in mind. And I say that because one of the frustrations that the previous SAC had is that they would have really invigorating discussions about policies and programs that the city should do. But it was hard then there was a disconnect between the committee discussions or the council's discussions and the city staff who were responsible for those policies or responsible for the programs. So we attempted to set up a formalized process where the standing committees have discussions, and then they elevate an idea, a recommendation to the city and say, the city, you should do X, Y, Z. That would elevate to you, the SAC. You as co-chairs of your committee might say, our committee has recommended that the city do X. And SAC, do you agree? If you agree, you vote on it, it officially comes to us. We are then obligated, we the city staff, we are obligated to come back to you and say, we got your idea. It's a great idea. We're moving on it and here's how. Or we got your idea. We're not able to move on it right now and here's why. It's formalizing that dialogue that really should always be there. What I feel like has transpired since this got going, and because of the speed with which we need to work to develop the plan, especially for the Climate Protection Fund, is that I don't know how much of that formality we really need. Like, I don't need your committee to wait 2 months for the SAC to vote on whether or not they had a good idea, right? I think that your liaisons are there with you. They're having that conversation. They immediately share that information with us as their colleagues, and we're actively talking about it. So I think that the time for a vote might be more critical when there is a policy or a program that carries some type of controversy or some lack of clarity that the city is committed to doing something. And it perhaps might be the weight of the SAC is needed in order to make it clear how important that priority is. So I don't know if that has actually muddied the waters more or made it more beneficial, because what I'm saying is that this body doesn't need to take an official vote to have that commitment to dialogue with our office, because we have already said we are making that commitment. So I'm going to pause there for a minute. I'll go to Anna and then we'll open back up for discussion on what we've said.
Thanks, Grace. That background context was really helpful to kind of understand the framing of this moving forward in response to how the last committee worked out. I have a couple of thoughts and then also a response to what you were just saying. So the first thing is that, I heard us kind of talking about how this is a kind of a cross-pollination space that we can come together at. I've seen it work well in other spaces, and so I'll offer it here to have like a collaboration parking lot or bike rack at the end of meetings like this, where, as we are giving our updates and maybe asking questions to each other, if there's something that's really picking up traction and we want to dig in, but it's going to like totally throw off the agenda, we have this space at the end of the call for 20 or 30 minutes to kind of figure out some next steps and what some of those collaborative opportunities are. So I wanted to offer that as a structural thing if we want to try it. I also wonder if it makes sense at any point for this group to have like a set of decision-making criteria that we agree on. So when we're coming to this group with proposals from our own committees or from staff or whatever it is, being able to like check the box, does it do this thing? Does it do this thing? Does it do this thing? Just so that we kind of have a formal way to determine if a proposal is something that's like worth our time really digging in, and all the pieces are there. So those were kind of some of the things that I was thinking. And then in response to what you were just saying, Grace, about some of the complications and frustrations from the past committee, I wonder, and I know we're kind of playing this role, but I wonder if there's any value on our team setting up liaisons on our committees to other committees to like help support the co-chairs in the cross-pollination aspect of all this. So I apologize that I just dumped kind of 3 ideas out, but wanted to offer those.
Oh, that's a very interesting idea. Let's go to Margaret for a moment, since I see her hand up.
Yes, and if we want to discuss Anna's ideas before mine, I'm totally fine waiting. All right, okay, I'll just.
You know, it'd be good just let's go ahead and get all the ideas out there and then we can discuss.
Okay, perfect. Yes, I really appreciate the background, and I think that it's interesting because this group is different because we're working under the timeline and then the idea that there's a fund attached to our ideas. And then there's certain criteria and such. And I'm still just a little vague, and I'm not able to share it with our members of our committee, what goals basically we have for this group or our different subcommittees in relation to the funding, and how we would present those ideas and what timeline by which we would need to present them. Basically, what is your hope for this entire process in relation to the Climate Action Fund? Because it's easy to understand what it is for overall advisory committee for a city, but since we have this funneled in, I feel like I'm a bit confused and I'm not able to communicate it in the way I would like to.
Sure, and so that's a question for me, is what is my hope for the role of this group related to the Climate Protection Fund? Sure, I can definitely do that. And then I think that'll be a good moment for us to open it up and see how the discussion plays out. So the Climate Protection Fund, we absolutely need, and we're committed to, a lot of influence. We want influence from our community, from the people we serve, on how we define what types of projects meet the goals that are laid out in the ordinance that set up the fund. So we know that the projects to be funded must have a direct impact on reducing greenhouse gas emissions. Every project needs to have some relation to that. We also know, obviously, there's the 6 allowable uses, so the projects need to fit within those. We know that a minimum of 50% of the funding over the life of the fund must be directly supporting people and communities who are most burdened by climate change. And we have made it very clear in all of our public statements that we understand that goal, that 50% number, to be a floor, not a ceiling. So when the criteria that we are working on in judging project proposals, people asking us for funding already, is there an equity component to this? And there may be projects where the answer to that will be no, but we expect those projects to be a minimum in our whole funding portfolio, whereas projects that can answer yes to equity, yes to greenhouse gas emissions, that will be the majority of what we fund. Now, what we're not asking this group to do, we are not asking you to actually read proposals that come to us for funding and to make decisions on whether or not project X or project Y receives funding. That responsibility is for our office alone. It's in the ordinance that way, but also because when we give funding out, we are not permitted to give a grant the way a foundation gives a grant. We have to enter into a contract for services that goes through a request for proposal process. So it's a contract between the city and county of Denver and whatever entity receives that funding. So that's why that level of decision-making falls to city staff alone. But the influence on how we direct our funding, how we evaluate the criteria that we use to determine whether or not a type of project meets the goals of the fund, that is where we want to have the conversation with you. And I'll use I'll stop talking soon. I'm sorry, I'm talking so much. I'll use 2 of the criteria as an example. The community adaptation and resiliency, community-based projects focused on adaptation, resiliency, and environmental justice needs to be defined, as does the allowable use. And I'm sorry, because I'm live, I am blanking, and I apologize for that. and someone's putting in the chat, can we make recommendations on which projects get the funding? I'll get to that next. So just using the environmental justice criteria or allowable use as an example, that needs to be defined. We absolutely want this committee, as well as other stakeholders we work with, to help us make those definitions. So I'll stop there for a moment, and let's see, I see Lori and Anna's hands up first, and I'll also try to keep an eye on the chat. So Lori, oh no, Anna took hers down, Lori, and then Stuart.
I just have a quick question. We keep hearing that in November, there'll be the 5-year funding plan. And what are we doing? We're not going to be very far in November. And if we've already defined 5 years, just clarify this for me, please.
Sure. So the Sustainability Advisory Council and all of the standing committees are a very important part of our stakeholder engagement. It is not the only part of our stakeholder engagement. So an example is on this past Thursday, we had a public information session about the Climate Protection Fund that was geared specifically for nonprofit organizations. And Sunrisa, who's here, part of her job is to actually go and meet with community organizations to talk with them about the fund and to work with them on identifying the needs of their communities that could be supported through the dollars of the fund. So we are taking in information and input from a lot of different sources, and then we, the staff, are developing the 5-year plan that we are required to submit to council by November 3rd.
But will that set the funds for the next 5 years, or is it general? Or tell me something about how our work will then integrate with it after you identify what your 5-year plan is.
That's a good question, and I can only answer it to a certain extent, because if we had a plan to say November 3rd, here is a table of the exact dollars that we are going to assign to each of these allowable uses, and then call it a day, and that's the end of the plan, that would be one thing. That's not our plan. We do not see ourselves taking that strategy and developing this plan. We are more interested in this moment where we're at in the development process. We are more interested in determining the quality of the types of projects that should be funded. And that's the type of dialogue that we're having now. And that's where you will see your influence. So you should see the conversations you're having in your committees actually articulated in the plan as we begin to develop it and as we actually have something to share to the public, which we do not yet have. I'll go to Stuart next.
Hopefully I'm not diving into the weeds. I tend to do that, but I had mentioned earlier about the second phase of the e-bike going after delivery services. Mike brought that up with me and we had talked about it, and Naomi and I plan to bring that up at our next meeting. If our group says this is a fabulous idea and let's get moving, where does it go next? What do we do? Do we do a formal vote and then pass that information to you? Are we involved in the selection?
You are definitely not involved in the selection. That's what I was trying to say earlier. And I think I've seen the question in the chat too. So the SAC and its committees will not be involved in making determinations about which organizations or projects are actually funded. So and there won't be any stakeholder groups in that, because again, that's a contracting decision for the city. So that needs to fall to city staff. However, to your question about the vote, I'm going to look at your liaison. I'm looking at him through the screen right now. And I'll tell you that I think that our liaisons will be able to work with you to identify which ideas they can just simply take and run with and come back to you, and which ones might be somehow controversial that they can say, you know what, there more weight behind this through a vote would be really beneficial for us. Like, we can identify the types of projects or ideas that we know we can work on in some way. And we can also help identify which ones really need a little bit more an official title, an official stamp of approval, either from your committee and or from the SAC itself, in order to give us the call to action that we need. Because a lot of times what we're doing is we actually have to take your idea to our other colleagues, right, in other agencies. And there may be some that we know are going to be a heavy lift. And so I would say that, and again, we're all just getting started. We're all figuring out this process, but I think ideally, our staff liaisons are going to be able to tell you in every instance whether or not that's something that they can just run with and report back to you at the next meeting. Thanks. Other comments and questions, thoughts? Stephen, I see your actual hand up.
So I think what you just said, Grace, kind of leads to a comment I actually put in the chat, is that I think your staff, you guys are talking so much as a team behind the scenes that if the staff liaisons identify an opportunity for cross-pollination, I think this committee is only going to meet once a quarter, right? So we're not meeting regularly enough to hear, I don't think, what's going on. So, if Sonrisa decides that, there'd be something great to work with Katrina on and getting the co-chairs together, then on the back end, if we need to talk before our meetings or bring it up to our meetings, I think that's where that potentially might happen, in order to make sure that things are staying on track and not waiting around till the next quarter for us to figure out within this group that we might have been able to work on something, a month and a half ago, right?
I think that sounds like a fine idea, and I can certainly, there's some liaisons here, but others who aren't, and I think we can certainly talk about that as a staff. And I think you're right that it seems natural, and perhaps what we need to do, again, for the future us, is to codify that in how this commission, or how this council runs. And I'm trying to read the chat at the same time. Aaron, it looks like your hand's up.
I just have a quick suggestion. If we don't have input on individual projects, which doesn't sound like that would be appropriate, I'd love to see an ongoing dashboard of what gets awarded, in what categories, for what amounts, and then maybe some real metrics on what are their planned GHG reductions, or what populations are they planning on serving? Something where at least quarterly we can kind of see if we're balanced, and then we can give some input back on what future projects should be to balance out the portfolio.
I think that's very smart, and I'm gonna lean on one of my colleagues here to go grab the Climate Protection Fund link from our website and drop that here for all to see. So we have a page on our website dedicated to the Climate Protection Fund. And as we begin to actually award dollars to organizations, and I should add, we will also be awarding dollars to City and County of Denver agencies for their projects as well. All of that information will be shared on that website. So yes, although Stuart did mention that we have made our first announcement of an award for e-bikes for essential workers, we have the press release on our website. We haven't actually created a table that I think you might have in mind, where we share the name of the organization, the type of work being done, the amount funded, the outcomes we expect, and then hopefully reporting out, right, of the actual metrics. That is absolutely in our minds. We want to do that. We just simply haven't formatted it yet. But yes, so thank you, Taylor. She dropped it in the chat. So please keep an eye on that. We will be putting that information there for all to see. Stuart, looks like your hand is up. Oh, no. Okay. And Marcel, your hand is up.
Yeah, this is not related to projects, but I think it'd be a really good idea if we can include just an effort for all of the co-chairs to, whenever we create this Google Drive, to share notes of their committee meetings. I think that would connect all the groups a little bit more, and so so that our work can be cohesive for everyone. So if y'all think that's a good idea.
I think it's a good idea. And, depending on how the timing works, I might be able to share notes when I put out the appointments for these meetings. And then you'll have everybody's meeting notes all in one place. And I think that in general, the whole idea of shared documents is something we need to wrap our heads around to make sure that we're setting up systems that work for everybody. So that's a great idea, and I'll definitely report back to you on that.
Thank you.
Margaret, your hand is up.
I'm so sorry. I have another question. I'm still just, I
You
guess
don't
I
have to
wanna
apologize.
I just want to make sure that I'm hearing correctly. So has there already been priorities developed and put forth for the action fund? And there's already projects coming into the city to review. And our goal as sub-working groups is to pull together ideas and look at priorities for these topics that we believe exist. And then that information on a quantitative level is going to inform some of the decision making. But are you also saying that if we come up with finite projects or detailed projects, those will also be submitted, but they'd be submitted through the funding that goes to different city departments within the city of Denver?
Oh, you have a lot packed in there. It was a little hard for me to follow all the questions. So I will, if you don't mind, maybe even put some of that in the chat while I'm talking, and then that way I'll be able to follow up. So, okay, so if your committees come up with actual ideas for projects, your liaisons will bring that back to our group discussions that we're already having about the Climate Protection Fund. So for example, we are just keeping a running list of all the different ideas that come to us for the types of projects that could be funded. So that's a very simple way of getting your thoughts and ideas onto our radar. That's at least one of your questions that I heard. Oh, that may be the only part that I heard that I can recall at this time. Can you start from the top?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm not very good at chatting when I was listening.
Okay.
So that did answer the one question, because where I'm confused is what sort of procedures are even set up to make sure that we're not reinventing something that you already have 60% of it done, I guess. I'd like to just know where we start working from and then where our ideas will be funneled. But it sounds, yeah, that maybe that's still under review.
Well, I think the funnel is your liaison. That's number one, is that you have discussions, and then your liaison is taking your ideas and bringing them back to the CASR team. So that's number one. In terms of not wanting to reinvent the wheel, I don't think that you will get so far along, like you're not actually going to be planning projects to be funded. I think your idea is to say, Mike, on transportation, we think that e-bikes for delivery services is something that is a type of project that should be funded. It meets the greenhouse gas emissions requirement. If you positioned it this way, it would meet equity requirements. We think this is an idea you should pursue. That's probably about as far as your committees need to go in that type of discussion. You might actually want to start at even a higher level, like a more bird's eye view of what are the real goals, right? How does, how would a renewables program really address an equity concern in a way that resonates with community-based organizations, or that has an impact at a neighborhood level? So it's, to a certain extent, you could have philosophical discussions, which are much broader in nature, as well as somewhat in the weeds, very project specific. CASR, we want to see these three things in our community in the next year in order to be able to measure success of this program. This is exactly the conversation we want to be having right now. So I'm very happy with this. Please continue with other ideas. We have 12 minutes left in our meeting. And this was actually the next part of our agenda anyway, so we're doing just fine. Lori.
So how much of what we're talking about, or how much are you relying on the climate action plan recommendations? Is that a springboard we should start with? I mean, they're amazing, the ones I've been reading. So I'm wondering if we, as a committee, start with all the ones under our umbrella that are in there, or I guess I'm having a little trouble.
Sure, that's an excellent question. So again, I'm going to call on one of my colleagues to please drop in a link in the chat to the Climate Action Task Force page so that folks can access the report easily. I think let me start over. So the Climate Action Task Force finished their work in July of 2020 and submitted to the mayor's office, and thus to us, their report of recommendations. What's interesting to know about that is the act of submitting the report, or of us receiving the report, does not equal the city and county of Denver actually committing to do all of the actions in that plan. So yes, I think that it's an excellent document for these committees to dive into, to reinforce your support for whichever recommendations you think should rise to the top that we absolutely should not wait on. And I want to make sure that it's clear that we're not just sitting on that report and pretending like it's not something real, like we're not committing to it. We are. And a great example of that is the work that our buildings team is doing to advance net zero into our building code over the next 3 code cycles, so that by 2030, all new construction buildings and homes will be net zero. So that is a goal that the Climate Action Task Force set. Our buildings team is working on that, and they have an implementation plan that will get us to that goal. So absolutely, if you think that if your committee thinks that there are recommendations in there that we should be working on, bring those up. Your liaison will be able to tell you where we're at with those. And if what you hear from us is not satisfactory, that is exactly the kind of thing that you want to say, our committee says, CASR, the city and county of Denver should do this, should implement this recommendation. That would be a great use of your time. Anna.
Thanks. So I'm wondering if there would be any value in like committees receiving, and I think there's probably plans for this to happen already a little bit, but receiving like prompts from staff as far as what is worth our time as a committee to really dig into, with of course some room for creativity for us to kind of nurture and foster our own ideas to bring them to you, but just to make sure that we are using our time really responsibly with our committees. Is that something that is planned at all, or that other folks would see value in?
That's an interesting one. And I see most of my colleagues are off screen right now. I might ask to see if any of them would like to pop on, because one of the things, and you should all correct me if I'm wrong, because you were at these meetings. I think the staff liaisons were trying very hard to make sure that your committees or that your discussions are run by your committee. And again, not by them. They are your liaison. They are your technical expert. They don't necessarily want to be in a position of creating your agenda. So do any of our staff liaisons want to comment on that balance?
Well, and can I just add something too before that? So yeah, I think that's probably like balance is probably the key word there. Like I definitely felt that, Johnny, from you, as far as like us having space to do what we really want to do and completely appreciate it. But I mean, we deal with something similar at Sierra Club a lot, which is a staff and volunteer organization, right? Where we work with a lot of experts who volunteer in our work. And there does have to be a balance of like us clearly indicating what staff will support experts that are working with us on and stuff like that, so that folks aren't spending a lot of time coming with concepts that like we, for some reason, find ourselves unable to pursue, and then folks feeling bummed about that. So yeah, would love to help find that balance.
Yeah, and just to speak to that, I think we're still working towards what that balance ultimately will be. I anticipate having a more in-depth role in facilitation and helping get things started and really working through some of the discussions and being the facilitator of, you know, what is the vision for our committee? What are the priorities? What are the metrics that we can use, and working on that together. And then once it gets to a point where the committee feels really confident in the structure that we've established, handing over more and more responsibility as Anna and Armando and the rest of the team are ready to accept it, and just having open communication and making sure that what we're doing works for everybody that's involved.
I'm sorry, I had previously seen Naomi's hand up, Naomi, but now it's gone. So now I see Aaron and Aileen, and oh, okay, Aaron and Aileen next, and then Anna.
Yeah, I just wanted to second what Anna would say. I think some structure and some prompts. I think prompts was a great word for, for the staff to bring. And I think just the one piece I wanted to add to that was maybe in some of the staff conversations, what are some of the other committees working on that would be right for our specific committee to be talking about? You know, if it's the transportation committee is talking about EV chargers, the buildings and homes, are we talking about pre-wiring, requiring pre-wiring stuff in building code, that kind of, we're going to need that help from the staff liaisons just for those prompts of what's going on in the other committees. So I'd love to see that.
All right, thank you. And I just want to be cognizant of time. We now have 5 minutes left. So I'm going to go to Aileen and Lisa and then Liz.
So I'm going to pile on to what Anna and Aaron said and just add that I think that this is where the co-chairs and the facilitators, they help you guys, keep the group autonomous and, that group that's making the recommendations and driving their committee work. But then, they're kind of your filter for the staff to, the staff are the subject matter experts, and to what Anna was saying, like what's realistic for you to actually do. So my point is rely on those co-chairs, and then maybe at this top level, the facilitators. But the prompts are really good and they don't have to be a bad thing. And as co-chairs, if you guys are in the wrong direction or we disagree, then that's what a co-chair is for, to be like, hey, can we rethink this a little bit? And that's okay.
Thank you. Lisa.
I fourth this and want to add that I think it's crucial to figure it out too, because making the concrete figured out because of group dynamics. And our committee members are, at least from our committee, and I see other people nodding as well, they're like at that first meeting, they're eager, they're asking like, what are we gonna do? And should we break out into subgroups? And what is the ask? And there's always that energy. People are excited to have been chosen for this and want to, they want to be working on things that are concrete. It was my sense from our committee. And so that's what I wanted to add for the group process and keeping up that enthusiasm.
That's a really good point. We certainly don't want to lose that. We've all been through meeting after meeting that ends up at nothing, and then people stop coming. Liz, your hand had been up and then you went away.
I just put it down, but I just wanted to say that how I've been thinking about my role is as a guide and a navigator. So how can I support what the committee wants to do? How can I provide insight into how the city functions? How can I provide guidance for how to strengthen a recommendation, right? So not necessarily being the person who says you should be working on this and not that, but rather when the committee makes decisions about what they want to focus on, then supporting them, guiding them, navigating through, city process and just understanding how we work as an agency, so that those recommendations, when they do come forward, can be as strong as possible.
Great.
Yeah, I just want to
Go ahead,
maybe add a little
Sarisa.
bit there. Yeah, thanks. I can't raise my hand because I'm a co-host, so I don't have that function. So I just had to be rudely interrupting people. The thing I was going to say is something similar, but I think for us and our committee, I was really trying to highlight the timelines and things that we're working on as a city, and what are the really great, entry points for our committee to be able to give recommendations on a timely basis that's useful to our group, so, or to the CASR office. So I really lean on the side of kind of like what Liz is saying, as far as being a navigator and being a guide, and then really trying to listen to the conversation that is coming up from the committee itself, and then help them get that voice put out in whatever is the best way, shape, or form. And almost to some of the things you were suggesting earlier, Grace, were like, that could just be we hear you, we got it, we're going to go, integrate it right away. Or no, that's something that needs formal type of recommendation, and let's push towards that. So in any case, yeah, I think the first meeting we did a lot of information dumping and trying to get people up to speed, which is a really great way to dampen a lot of enthusiasm to talk at everybody. But I think as we go forward, there's going to be a lot of opportunity for the committee to lead and direct their own work. And that's what I'm trying to help facilitate and push them to do, is empower the co-chairs as much as possible.
Well, I don't know about you, but I really like where the conversation went and where we ended up. I think that's a really great consensus to come to. It sounds like, I mean, what I'm hearing is that our staff understand that we are subject matter experts. We are there to guide. It sounds like you as co-chairs want some amount of guidance to get started, and then you really do want to take off and get running. And so if that's a consensus that we're hearing, I think that we can all lead into that with our next meeting, both at the committee level and right here at the SAC too, right? And so I really appreciate all of you being willing to meet again in July. So which is only 2 months rather than every 3 months, just because we have so much to do right now. We have so much to do and we so rely on you. So we're right at 5 o'clock. I so appreciate your time. Thank you so much for your engagement in this. Congratulations on concluding your first meeting. Thank you again to our interpreters, and we will all remind ourselves to be thoughtful and a little slower in our next communications. I will get these notes out to you as soon as possible. Thank you. Enjoy the rest of your week, and good luck on your next meeting. I look forward to hearing more. Thank you all.
Thanks, everyone.
We missed you, Inez. See you next time.